Hey everyone, and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore. I'm one of your hosts. I'm joined by Mr. Dr. Scott Melson.
What's up, man?
Hey man, how are you?
I'm so much better than I was last week.
Yeah?
I was, a little sick last week.
Oh, that's right.
A little under the weather. I'm feeling.
Man, it's only been 1 week.
It's only been a week, but I'm feeling better. I'm back after it.
It's been a long week then.
Maybe not quite 100%, but I'm like probably 95%.
95 is, that's a solid A.
Yeah, man, I'll take it.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thanks, dude.
All right, so we are doing a bit of a different episode today. We're going to have a brief news roundup.
Yeah.
But really, the topic of the day is marijuana, if I can pronounce it like you do.
Marijuana.
So I think it's been the big talk of the week. So Scott, take us through the news roundup real quick.
So, with one exception, all of our news this week is going to be related to State Question 788, the Board of Health meeting this week, and the fallout, which will be our main topic today. So, first up, we've got from News OK. The board broke tradition in setting prescription marijuana rules. Author unknown. This is kind of a piece that has contributions from several great journalists at News OK: Ben Felder, Justin Wingirter, and Meg Wingirter. They are go through exactly what the Board of Health did in terms of enacting regulations and setting up a framework for a medical marijuana industry in Oklahoma, and how the board maybe has kind of broken some precedent here.
Which is going to be a big part of our discussion today.
Yeah, so that's first up. Next, if you would like to know more about exactly who these folks are, Tulsa World has a article that profiles all the members of the State Board of Health. There's some doctors there, there's a dentist, even some healthcare executives there from all over the state, and it lists which board members represent which counties. And so it is worth, I think, your time to check that out if you kind of want to know more. There's a great article by Catherine Sweeney from Journal Record. Does great work at that paper that talks about costs for marijuana growers, and specifically looks at one of the rules that the State Board of Health put in their regulations this week, talking about the ban on outdoor commercial growing. Has a lot of people upset, and talks about what the implications are for real estate in Oklahoma, and what the implications are for prices of commercial warehouse space, and what that can mean for a burgeoning industry here in the state by having that requirement that commercial grow operations be limited to indoors. Lastly, the last marijuana-related article is, again, from News OK. There have been not one, but two lawsuits already filed.
Dose lawsuits
That were filed on Friday, naming variably Governor Fallon, members of the Board of Health, several other administrators in Oklahoma government, about these rules and trying to get them, reviewed by the courts. So those are the four marijuana-related articles, and then we have, as always, everyone's favorite segment.
Pruitt Watch.
It's Pruitt Watch.
Are we doing that now or later? Later.
Sure.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah. So
that was very exciting, though.
It was right. So, really, that's it for the news roundup, and we're not going to talk in detail about any of these articles because kind of a longer discussion about marijuana is really what we're going to focus on for the rest of the episode.
That's right. And I will. By this point, you have already heard a disclaimer that I just thought to add at the beginning of this. Scott and I are going to just approach this unfiltered. This is Scott Melson and Andy Moore as two concerned citizens, as individual people, as voters who have opinions on this issue. This does not reflect the opinions of our organization. I guess this is the disclaimer right now.
Yeah.
So you've heard it now. But we really want to kind of have an honest discussion, because almost every time that we've gotten together in the last few weeks and we talk about this issue, we get heated, we get into it, and I'm like, man, we should record this, and we just haven't done it yet. And so we're just gonna do it. Also, I'm not gonna edit out any adult language.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be the F word at some point, and probably the S word.
Probably.
But definitely not the C word, because we have got standards. But if you have kids in the car, earmuffs, kids.
Other part of the disclaimer I think that's worth mentioning too, it has come up from time to time on the podcast. I'm a physician here in Oklahoma. Andy, you are a licensed professional counselor. Mm-hmm. Both of us work for large health groups.
Entities, yes.
Yeah, and any opinions that we state here are our own. They're not reflective of any policy or policy or statement that should be attributed to the institutions for which we work.
Right. On that note, I've got a bone to pick with you people about what you're getting angry about. So this is a commentary that's far and wide.
Yes.
So let's quickly.
First,
you said what's happened this week.
Yeah. So just a quick recap. So the State Board of Health met on Wednesday, and for those that started paying attention to this issue today, on June 26th in the primary election, Oklahoma voters passed by a wide margin State Question 788, which legalizes medicinal cannabis in Oklahoma. The state question was written in a pretty broad way,
on purpose,
and one thing that was, I think, discussed a lot in the lead up to the election, when people had concerns about how broad that language was, a common retort was that, well, it also says that the State Board of Health, assuming the state question passes, that the Board of Health will come back and then establish a regulatory framework for how this industry will function in Oklahoma. And they have 30 days to do that from the time that the state question passes. Mm-hmm. So it passed. The result is certified. The Board of Health has been meeting. They've actually been working on regulations for several months now, enlisting the opinions of stakeholders, other government agencies, and they met on Wednesday, I believe, of this week, and they met and they passed a set of regulations, and that was controversial for a couple of reasons. Probably the biggest thing is that when they met, they had the proposed rules that have been published, that have been available on the web for quite some time.
However, like a couple of weeks, because they had to allow for public comment, right? So you get to read the rules and then comment on your thoughts about these rules.
During the meeting, there were 2 motions made to amend the rules in fairly significant ways. So the first one was a motion that changed the rules to ban smokable forms of marijuana,
right?
Which was not part of the framework of the rules that had been posted and available for public comment. Right. So it was an oral motion made to amend the rules to ban smokable forms of marijuana, and it passed 5-4. The second motion was to require a licensed pharmacist to be that managers of dispensaries, of marijuana dispensaries, must be licensed pharmacists.
Right.
That was also an amendment made by an oral motion and was adopted 5-4.
So these were 2 rules. So ban smokable weed, and that's weed is my
that's fine.
My slang term of choice. Also pot, and sometimes ganja. I think that's underused. Yeah. So to ban smokable marijuana and to require a pharmacist in each dispensary
to be the manager of each dispensary and to be on site.
The manager or just on site?
No, to be the manager. So the manager of the dispensary must be a pharmacist.
Okay, that's bogus, but we'll get into this right now. So those are the 2 rules, and they both passed 5-4.
And
5-2?
5-4. 5-4. And
so just barely passed.
Yes. And to say that there has been a strong reaction to that, I think would be underselling. Right. I mean, social media erupted. News stories have been written about it. I mean, it has been the talk, I think, of certainly what I've been hearing about for the remainder of the week.
And I did see that both the Oklahomans Political State podcast and Non-Doc and FKG Consulting's podcast both had the same topic this week. It is the topic du jour of podcasts in Oklahoma that deal with politics.
Right.
So we should probably say that the Board of Health is composed of.
There's 9 folks on it.
9 people. Bunch of physicians, doctors of various sorts, and then some like healthcare administrators, policy people. And they are not elected, they are appointed.
Yes.
Are they all appointed by the governor?
They are all appointed. I'm not certain if they're all appointed by the governor or if there's governor, speaker, and Senate pro tem.
Right. That's usually how it goes. And so that's who it is. And so here we are. So we've got 2 rules that passed just barely, and this was shocking to a number of people, including House Majority Leader, Floor
Leader Eccles.
John Eccles, and who was on vacation. And when he got the news, some reporters called him, and he was like, "What happened?" No, and his statement was like, I had no idea, and he was appalled, I think, because the legislature, especially leadership, had been in talks with the industry and with the Board of Health for weeks, developing these rules, making sure that everyone's kind of on board, just like, hey, here's what we're thinking. And this was allegedly not part of the discussion.
Right.
As far as we know.
Right. The other thing that's been, the other thing that was kind of controversial about this is in the aftermath, none of the board members commented. So newspaper organizations, other news organizations tried to solicit comment on this action from board members. None of them replied for Skilling, I think, replied for comment, and his comment was, I can't comment. And so no one commented, and there doesn't seem to be, staff at the Board of Health, at the Department of Health, who've been involved in crafting these rules, said, we don't know where this language came from. Like, we don't know where these two, where did these two proposals come from, that you ban smokable forms and that you have to have a pharmacist. So that was one point of controversy. But in addition to that, Andy, I think you could accurately say that the predominant reaction to this has been outrage, right?
Yeah.
Outrage at the process, but also outrage at just what the rule changes themselves.
Right. So, when this first happened, so it passed with a wide majority, 57% of the vote. Governor Fallon at first had said, I'll probably call a special session. And then after it passed said, no, I'm not going to. And then the Board of Health put out their rules for public comment. And then they passed different ones.
Right.
After that, Speaker McCall and Senate Pro Tem Treat said, oh, well, in that case, we're going to form a working group.
A bipartisan working group.
A bipartisan working group to review this stuff and to come up with some ideas, which is dumb.
Sounds great, opinion. But doesn't really necessarily
doesn't do anything. It's a committee of people that they're going to pick and whatever. Right. Even if they pick a bipartisan group, it's still, they're not actually going to do anything because it's not in the legislature's hands. It's up to the Board of Health. So they can, whatever.
Now, it will be in the legislature's hands. So one thing to be clear on, the rules that were passed by the Board of Health, these are emergency rules, okay? And they are put in place and they become effective, essentially, when the governor signs them, which she did.
The very next day.
Right.
Like, quickly.
But because they are, my understanding is, Representative Emily Virgin from Norman had a great thread on this. My understanding is that because they are emergency rules, they are subject to legislative review in the next legislative session,
which whenever that occurs
in February.
Not what if they call a special session?
Then it would be then too.
Okay, so whenever that occurs.
Yeah. But so these rules they are under the purview of the legislature when they come back.
Okay. So what's interesting about this is that even after the law passed, so the law says you've got 30 days, right, to get this, get everything in place and get it going. And that was on the 26th. Today's the 14th.
Right.
So we've got 12 days left before this is supposed to be in. And in some states, this is what's happened. The wheels have fallen off. It's gotten tied up in courts for months, right? And people haven't had access to the thing that they voted. And this was a pretty wide margin of passage. So
I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So people are outraged. Andy, why are people so pissed off?
I just wrote, why are people so upset with the rules on my screen here to ask you that. So I think, and so we're going to go back and forth about this, and it's going to be somewhat circular. I think we're going to circle back to the same thing, that people are pissed because this is not actually recreational marijuana. That is my state. I will contend that is the baseline issue that undermines, or that the foundation for all of their outrage. People are upset, they will say, for lots of other reasons, and I will contend those reasons are bogus, and this is why they keep losing, right? They are saying they're pissed because they thought they're voting for smokable marijuana, and because the rules also outlaw like certain shapes of gummies, right? So like gummy bears.
It outlaws certain shapes of gummies. It also outlaws, it caps the THC concentration, which is the kind of active ingredient, if you will, or one of them in marijuana. It's what produces the euphoria. It caps the THC concentration at 12%. It also makes it illegal to have an outdoor commercial growing operation. Commercial growing operations have to be done indoors. Those are probably the ones that have generated the most
Right, so you
outrage
can't
and fervor.
just grow it in your pasture. You have to put a roof over your pasture, which is kind of a bullshit idea, right?
Well,
but anyway, so I think people are mad about this, and I'm going to just pause for a moment and take issue with this first thing that I've been saying to you like all week, is that the shape of your gummies doesn't fucking matter, right? Like, if it's a gummy bear or it's a square or a star or it's a tiny Buddha or whatever, a microphone, it doesn't matter. The shape of it is when it's in your mouth, you can't see it.
Right.
And the reason that they outline certain shapes, which is not uncommon, other states have the same rules, is that they don't want kids to look and think, "Ooh, gummy bears," and eat a gummy bear that's full of marijuana.
Right. And that's important because, people will say, well, no one ever overdoses of marijuana. It is true to say that, as far as I'm aware, there are no reports of adults overdosing on marijuana.
No,
right?
I have friends that will talk about it and be like, I smoked too much dope or I ate too many gummies and it kicked in and I got freaked out and nauseous and whatever.
Right. But children can absolutely overdose.
Oh, yeah.
And children like to eat candy
not known for their self-control,
like gummy bears. So if you have your 3-year-old or your 4-year-old that eats a package of gummies and eats the whole thing, you could be in serious trouble. So that's one point. People are upset
there's a reason for the rule, and also it doesn't freaking matter because
you're going to eat it.
You're going to eat it. What do you care?
Right.
If it's shaped like a penis or anything else, like you're gonna eat it and you're gonna get high, and that's what you want.
I take a vitamin every day, and it's a gummy. And you know what shape it is?
Bam Bam from Flintstones.
No, it's a square. It's actually, I guess it'd be more accurately to say it's a cube.
A rhombus.
It's a cube.
A cube. Okay.
It's a little cube vitamin.
It's fine. I mean, and what if?
It's great vitamin. Tastes delicious.
What if they only said you can only have oblong, like capsule shapes for gummies?
Right.
People would be upset about that, and it doesn't matter. It's the same stuff. You can shape it like whatever.
100%.
And it's because people want unfettered access to marijuana, which is fine. That's up to them. It doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, if you want to be outraged about something, as I wave my arms on the podcast, this is not the thing to be outraged about.
Right. No, and I've had a similar kind of reaction to this. And, I'm going to lay all my cards on the table here. I'm a doctor. I voted for State Question 788. There are, as we're going to talk about later, there's right now a couple petitions to try and get recreational marijuana on the ballot. I'm going to vote for those as well. So I was a supporter of medicinal, like passing the law for medicinal cannabis. I will tell you that I will not be writing it in my practice, and there are several reasons for it. One is that for us as physicians, there's not any like good data on how you write for this. Right. And when I say write for it, I mean give someone a prescription for it. Right. So an example would be if you came to me and had an ear infection, I wouldn't just say, yeah, you have an ear infection. You need to take this medicine. You need to take antibiotic Z. And you would say, okay, well, how much of antibiotic Z do I take? And how often do I take it? And for how long? And I would say you take this much and you take it twice a day and you take it for 10 days. That's how we work. We do our very, very best to say you use this much of a medicine, you use it this frequently, and you use it for this amount of time.
Right.
And with cannabis, and I'm not saying this is a good thing. I mean, I think in many ways it's a travesty that the federal laws have prohibited research from being done on this, but the research hasn't been there. And so I can't tell you that, right? If you're wanting to take marijuana for your chronic back pain or your anorexia or your cancer or whatever it is you're wanting to take it for, I can't tell you a dose. Right. And I can't tell you how frequently to take it. Because I can't tell you how long you should use it.
Right.
And it seems to me what people are upset about this week, and this has rubbed me the wrong way, like as a doctor, there's been all this talk of, well, it's a bunch of special interests. The Board of Health, right? Like, I don't see this as like a special interest group, right? I don't see the Oklahoma State Medical Association with this issue. There's been a lot of speculation that the Oklahoma State Medical Association was the group that was pushing to ban smokable forms of marijuana. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a special interest argument to say that a group of doctors said that you shouldn't smoke things.
Right.
Right.
But also it's okay because you shouldn't smoke things.
Right. You shouldn't smoke things. Right.
Like this, we all know this.
Right.
And I will contend, I'm the one on the soapbox today, I guess. I will contend that many of the people or some of the people at least, who are upset that you can't smoke weed are the same folks who are glad that you can't smoke tobacco in restaurants.
Right.
Right? Like, they're like, oh yeah, we don't want that tobacco smoke around. But then they're pissed that you can't smoke the weed. I'm like, listen, what do you care? If your goal is to get medical marijuana, you got it. Like you
Right.
can pop a gummy of whatever shape, except for gummy bears. Like, or you can still vape it, or you can eat it in brownies, or you can weed milkshakes. I don't know.
Right.
That's thing.
Like that's what has, and this is what I've said to you, and a couple of times I think I've said this. It seems like what people wanted from this law, or what they're upset about, is that they're making rules that say you can't just use however much you want, whenever you want, for however long you want,
which would be recreational.
Yeah, and again, I'm in favor of if that's what you want to do, that's your business, and that's fine. But that's called recreational marijuana. It's not called medicinal marijuana.
Right.
People are outraged that we're trying to treat this like a medicine.
And so, real quick, let's talk about recreational, because there is a petition being circulated right now. I think they're about halfway there on signatures, is my understanding. And they have until the 8th of next month to
I thought they were more, because they need 160. I thought they were about 100,000.
Oh, that's true. I heard they had 60,000. They need 160,000, and they have until I think August 8th to submit them and to get recreational marijuana on the ballot. The thing there is that they will have to, then those signatures will have to be certified, and that'll take a few weeks, at least, and so the question is, will it be on the November ballot? So that question first. Scott, do you think recreational weed will be on the November ballot?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think it will.
Really?
Yeah, I think it will, because I think right now, I think that people who want recreational marijuana I think if possible, they are even more motivated than they were with 788. And now that 788 has passed and there's been some restrictions put in place, I think that's going to kind of even further galvanize folks that are in favor of recreational. So
if it is, what impact do you think that will have on the election in November?
Tremendous.
So
now, I think that they will have a harder time. We were all pretty optimistic that 788 was going to pass. I think like in the week or days before the election, I said I think it's going to pass by a slimmer margin than people thought. I was guessing 52-48, and I was wrong. It was 57-43,
which in this day and age is a big margin.
Is a huge margin. I think that there will still be some folks who are maybe even that voted in favor of medicinal cannabis that are much more leery of recreational cannabis.
That's true. I think there will be fewer people that will support it, but I think it would still pass, especially because this issue right now with the Board of Health and the legislature and all that will really galvanize people, and you may turn out the pot vote, which will have, as we have seen,
significant impact on other statewide
races, right? So and it is a mischaracterization that only Democrats or liberals want legal marijuana.
Oh, that's a huge mischaracterization.
And I think if it doesn't pass now,
there's a lot of conservative people who lived through the 60s that would love to see recreational weed.
That's exactly right. There's a ton of Gen X people who lived through the 60s who are like, you know what, I used to smoke weed and it was cool.
They want low taxes, limited government, and recreational weed.
That's exactly right. And couldn't we all just chill out a little bit? Wouldn't it be okay for our society if we just would take a step, pop a gummy, and relax a little bit? I'm not saying I support it. I'm not saying I'm going to use it. But I'm just saying if given the opportunity, between opioids and marijuana, I take marijuana. Between meth and marijuana, I take marijuana.
Right.
Between drunk driving or someone using marijuana, I take marijuana.
Sure.
No one has ever smoked up or used marijuana and gotten really angry and gone after somebody.
Robin Williams said in his live show on Broadway in 2000, you've never met an angry pot smoker.
No.
So I don't know. I think if they can get the signatures and get on the ballot, I think it'll pass. I think you're right. I think it'll be a smaller margin, but kind of.
I don't know if they're going to get the signatures though. So I'll take the opposite position for the sake of the podcast, if not in real life. But because it is a huge burden, right? It's a lot of work and money to get signatures.
That's true.
So there's two ways, right? You can have an enormous grassroots effort and tons of people gathering signatures, which is what they're trying to do. Or you can pay a firm to help you get signatures.
Right.
And that is in itself a huge undertaking and also really expensive, $3 to $5 per signature.
Yeah, you're looking at for 160,000 signatures, and I think you and I have looked at the cost of this for some other things. And I think for 160,000 signatures, we were thinking it'd be right at 450,000.
At least
for
yeah,
like dollars, $450,000.
Because you pay the people to gather signatures, right?
Right.
This is kind of a thing that they do in a state like this.
And then you get the signatures, and the signatures have to be certified, and then the governor gets to put it on the election, decide what election it goes on. Now, we were having a conversation about this morning. It is my understanding that the governor gets to decide which election, like which ballot,
right,
it appears on, as long as there are multiple upcoming ballots onto which it can go.
Right. It has to be a statewide election.
Right. And the statewide elections, right, are the every other year primaries and the every other year general elections, right?
Right. Are there ever other things? I guess if someone resigned or something.
But it'd be a special election.
Right.
But I don't know that you don't know that that's going to happen. So I think, and the point I'm trying to make here is, I think that if they get the signatures and they get the signatures certified, I believe it has to go on the November ballot, as long as you can get signatures certified before the ballots start being printed.
Right. So yes. So that's I think that may be the linchpin, especially based on our conversation earlier today.
Yeah.
Is that I wouldn't be surprised, knowing the little bit that I know about the state legislature,
about the way things go down in Oklahoma.
Right. That someone tweeted the other day that it seems like the governor just looks around and says, "What's the worst thing I could do for the state?
Right.
I'll do that."
Right.
And I can't disagree.
Governor Fallon, if you're listening, we're sorry, but not sorry.
Right. You're a very nice person and maybe a terrible governor, in my own opinion. So I think what will happen is that they will get the signatures, and then there'll be some challenges to the signatures, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they will be delayed just enough, like maybe not a day, but like a week or like 5 days.
That they
beyond the threshold and be like, oh, you know what? It's too long. We can't get it on the next ballot. And so it'll be up for the next primary one, because I think it has to be within the next 24 months.
Yeah.
And so the next one would be the primary in 2020, right?
Yeah. Or I think they could choose to put it on the general election in 2020. I think. Could they not? I think they could.
I thought that it has to be the next statewide within the next 24 months. We should know this. We'll look it up and correct it next week, I guess.
But,
so,
coming back, I mean, it seems like your general, what?
No, go ahead.
Your general sense of the outrage about the rules the board passed on Wednesday is a bit, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. One, it's a bit overblown, like
misguided.
Calm down. And then two, we've had some other conversations where maybe it's a little bit contrived as well.
Well, I think it is. You don't have to calm down, but it needs to be guided correctly, right? Like arguing and getting pissed about the shape of your gummy is not the hill you want to die on.
Right.
Just from a strategic point of view, I think if you want to take issue with any of it, there's several things. The other thing, and let's talk about this in just a second, but the issue of requiring a pharmacist in each dispensary. I can't remember if there's an A in there or not. I think that's a more ludicrous. Well, it's a less ludicrous thing to be angry about, but a more pertinent issue. I think that people, if you're going to be angry, this is my recommendation to people of all political walks of life. If you're going to be angry, really you only have so much energy, right? Like, so make sure that whatever it is you're angry about is worth getting angry about. And in this day and age, there's a lot of stuff to get angry about, but not all of it matters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing, like when the Republicans got upset about the color of Obama's suit, like, fucking get over yourself.
Right.
That doesn't matter, right? If you want to get upset about, something like the fact that the president didn't look at the Queen of England as they're walking, is it inconsiderate? Sure. Right. Does it really matter for the shape of our country and the direction we're going? No, right? Like, the Queen's going to just roll her eyes and move on with her life. She's 92. It doesn't matter. But for this issue, for marijuana here in Oklahoma, the shape of gummies doesn't matter. The thing that matters is that you can get the thing that you wanted, and the thing that matters is that the State Board of Health did or did not follow the Open Meetings Act, which is a law.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question. There's an argument to be made that they did in fact follow the Open Meetings Act. And and open records because even though these are changes, they're not the rules that were posted online for public review and comment. They were made after the making of a proper motion during a meeting.
Right.
So and the meeting was open to the public. So
and
unless
they posted the agenda. So there's two things. I'm going to cut you off on purpose, because this is now
that's fine.
part of my roles, right? So as we discussed last week, I'm also now the executive director of the Freedom of Information Oklahoma organization, which deals with open meetings, as luck would have it. And so
you're balls deep in this.
I am, yes, indeed. Go balls deep. I haven't watched dodgeball in a long time. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Also, is Rip Torn his given name? Because that's a badass name.
I think it is, and yes.
And listeners, if you haven't seen the movie Dodgeball and you're under the age of 30, it's probably worth your time. For the rest of us, as you've aged, it's not.
Did you have any gummies before you watched Dodgeball?
No. Was that an option?
I don't know.
No. I've never had a gummy.
Of
Marijuana. I do love gummy worms, though.
Dude, they're the best.
Mike and Ike's are kind of gummy also. Anyway.
Sour gummies. I'm a big sour gummy.
Oh, yeah. Those are good. So.
God, Rip Torn is old. He looks terrible.
Scott just Googled Rip Torn and is shocked at what he's seen. How old is he?
He is 87. But look at him in 2015.
No way.
Yeah, dude.
Holy moly.
And to answer your question, his given name is Elmore Rual Torn Jr.
Not Rual, but Rual?
Rual.
Interesting. Torn is his last name, though?
Torn is his last name.
You heard it here first, folks. Rip Torn. All right, well.
Trivia question. What was he nominated for? What film was he nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor?
Men in Black.
No.
As
it turns out.
Shocked, I tell you.
He was nominated for Marsh Turner in Cross Creek, 1984.
I've never heard of this film.
That's because I was 1.
1981?
84.
84. I was 3.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, God damn it, what do we...
Balls deep, open meetings.
Open meetings. That's what's important. So yes, I cut you off for this purpose. So that the fact that they posted the agenda in advance and they held the meeting and it was a proper motion, those things are all true and legal. I would argue, as did Joey Sennett, who used to be used to be affiliated with FOI Oklahoma, that in the spirit of open records and open meetings, the rules should be on there. They don't have to be. It should be on there. Now the lawsuits against this contend that there was a secret meeting of 5 members of the board outside of an actual meeting. And this is the rule, right? Is that if you are a publicly funded entity and you have a quorum, so more than 50%, so in this case 5 out of 9, met to discuss business, like board business,
you got to keep a record.
You've got to keep a record, and you can meet, you can have lunch and tacos and hang out and talk about your kids and whatever, but you can't discuss business at that meeting, which I get might be tough. However, these are the rules, man. This is the law. And so, like, I mean, if we had, more than half of our let's fix this board together, I would definitely call a quorum and be like, hey, let's get some stuff done. And so in this situation, they allege that 5 members met together, planned this out, and then showed up and we're like, oh, boom, hey, there's a motion and we passed this.
Are they alleging that based on actual knowledge, or are they just assuming that the 5 people who voted in for it got together and did that?
They said that they have evidence, but they did not want to share it for fear of retribution at the time. And so that, I think this, as it progresses, will be really interesting. I'm going to keep a close eye on it for multiple reasons, because if true, like this shows some... not collusion necessarily, but it shows that they violated the law. And so the lawsuit includes the governor, the actual members of the board, which is they could hold some personal liability. Like this is a big, to quote Nate Silver on 538, I give 3 big fucking deals a year. This is a big fucking deal.
Yeah. No, I agree. The other thing that's interesting about this and why there's potentially some personal legal liability here, they went against the recommendations of their general counsel.
Right.
Which
so
is
if your lawyer tells you not to do it, don't do it.
Which that to me, that is a huge deal. Like their lawyer, like, there had been some discussion, I guess, of at least the rule on requiring a pharmacist to be the manager of the dispensary.
Mm-hmm.
They had talked about that in some board meetings, and the general counsel said, "Yeah, I don't think we can get there. I don't think the way the state question is written gets us there. You'd have to actually have the legislature come and make a statutory change in order to do that." And they ignored that advice and did it anyway. Right. So apparently the rule is when the general counsel of the agency gives you a legal opinion that you can't do something, and then you do it anyway, you personally are responsible, not the agency.
Right, which has happened multiple times in our state government where it's like someone's like, this is a bad idea. And they're like, you know what, let's go ahead and do it.
We have a penchant for not following the law.
We do. And how has it worked out in the past?
Not great.
Not well. How much would this cost the state? I tweeted this the other day. I said, how much is a lawsuit going to cost? I got estimates from $2 billion to $1 trillion to like, I was like, well, probably not those numbers. But here's my answer. If it's more than zero,
it's too much.
It's too much for something like this, because we know that history will bear out. I will come back and podcast in 50 years, if we still have podcasts, and say, I told you so, that this is coming, right? I think...
We'll be podcasting in Russian in 50 years.
I think even opponents...
No.
Also
Niet.
in Russian, it's still no. Niet? Is that it?
Niet.
Nine?
No, that's German.
I know. That's why I did it.
Oh.
In Spanish, though, still no.
Yeah.
What about Portuguese? Do you know Portuguese?
No.
Is it still no?
I don't know the answer to that.
Who's on first? So I think the history will bear out that this is going to happen, right? Like, we will be the 31st state to legalize medical marijuana. 31st. We're not last, but also that means that 3/5 of the country is already on board with this. Yeah. 60% is already on board.
Yep.
We're just not last for once, which is a foreign concept to the state of Oklahoma. And so I think that this is going to be, it's going to happen. They're trying to delay it, and what if?
See, here's I disagree though a little bit. I disagree. I don't think that they're trying to. So this is where now maybe I'm not cynical enough, but I don't believe that the intent of the board of the medical board of the board of health here is to try and like basically undo the law and make it so that the recreational cannabis system is so regulated and so burdensome and so whatever that it basically becomes unworkable and you just can't have one. Like, I don't think that's the point. Like, I don't think the point of banning smokables is to give big pharmaceutical companies from out of state the only, because the deal is if you can't have smokable weed, then you got to make it edible, right? Or in some other kind of form. And that's a lot more expensive than to just take the leaves and dry them and roll them up and smoke them, right? So one allegation has been that this is also so that big pharmaceutical companies can come in and basically corner the market because they're set up and have more money to do this. I think that I think that the Board of Health said that you shouldn't. The group that's charged of protecting the health of Oklahomans said that we're going to ban smokable marijuana because smoking is bad.
Which it
right?
is.
I think that's what it is.
Well, but people, they read into their intent.
Right.
Which is
it's the same kind of thing with pharmacists. Like, the Board of Pharmacy recommended having a pharmacist be managers of the dispensaries.
Is that a job security thing?
I really don't think it is. I mean, again, I don't know the president of the State Board of Pharmacy, but the whole point of this is we're going to treat, in this instance, we're treating marijuana like a medicine, specifically a prescription medicine. And I can tell you, for a fact, there is no other prescription medicine in Oklahoma that you can legally obtain from anyone other than a licensed pharmacist. Right? Like, the exception to that is if your doctor gives you a sample, right? So, like, you can go see your doctor and they can dispense, samples of blood pressure or diabetes medicine or whatever, but you have to get a prescription and you have to fill it from your pharmacist. And so I think that if you're the Board of Pharmacy, and I want to be clear, I'm not saying I agree with this rule change, but I guess I would ask, okay, what is the compelling reason that marijuana should be treated differently than literally every other prescription medicine in Oklahoma?
Right.
Like, what's the reason? Like, what's the reason for it to be in a special category?
Well, and because
that doesn't require a pharmacist.
Because you can't grow Xanax or Lipitor in your backyard. I think that's the reason, and because it's a different thing, right? Like, this is the same issue with like alcohol that you can distill your own booze, right? And so like it makes it difficult to regulate. But you can't. I mean, no one is like, cooking up Paxil in their backyard, and so I think that
you
changes.
you actually can't distill booze. You can brew beer. You cannot distill your own whiskey.
Right. You have to buy a corporate license, but you can't legally. You actually can do it.
Yeah,
but I cannot physically make Paxil in my garage that I know of. Like the contents.
Probably not.
Probably not. It would be booze or marijuana, right? The substitutes is the issue. And so I think that changes the power differential in this situation.
All right. Fair. Also, booze, not a medicine.
Well, right. But let's say we go back to Prohibition and they try to pass medical whiskey, right? Or medical alcohol instead of full recreation. And this is the issue. So that's a great parallel, right? Like alcohol was legal and then Prohibition came, a U.S. constitutional amendment, and then they repealed Prohibition.
Right.
And it was legal again. What if instead of actually just full on repealing it, they said, instead, we're going to pass what we call medical alcohol. It can be used as an antiseptic. It can be used as a analgesic. That's
pain medicine for those playing the home game.
Right. Yeah. Look at me with the $10 word and the $3 education. And so I think if we did that, we would end up in the same situation. And this is, again, I will come back to what I said first. Yeah. The real issue here is that it's not fully legal.
People want recreational, and they thought they were voting for a medical law that basically gave them recreational license.
The opponents are like, oh, this is a road to recreational weed. And I was like, hell yeah, it is. That's why they're doing it.
Right.
We all know it. Let's just, what do you, is that, I don't understand that argument against it. Obviously that's it.
Right. And like I said, I'm trying to be clear about what I think, mostly because I don't want to get hate tweets and
I'm okay with your hate tweets.
Hate mail. I mean, I guess you can send them to me, but I'm not against medical cannabis. I'm not against recreational cannabis. I'm not, I'm kind of 6 one way, half dozen the other about the changes that the board made. I'm not, pissed off by them. I'm not staunchly in favor of them. I've been irritated this week at all the fervor about how pissed off people are about them. To me, that's what has my my kind of irritatedness up, is just everybody take a minute and you know what I mean?
Right.
Just if you're really again, you're getting angry that the Board of Health is treating medical marijuana like a medicine.
Right. So I've had this discussion before where the problem is that they can't fully treat it like a medication because it lacks some of the things that medications have,
like evidence and dosing.
Well, because it hasn't been studied because it's illegal. Just so our original intent today was to have a podcast titled "A Doctor, a Lawyer, and a Therapist Walk into a Bar."
The lawyer had to go home to her child.
But the lawyer had to go home and take care of her kiddo, which is cool. She's just not here. So shout out to Nicole, our board president. We'll catch you next time.
Yes.
And she doesn't listen to the podcast anyway, so this is fine. But if
she comes on but doesn't listen.
That's right. Yeah, she was on that one episode.
Yeah.
So I think that the issue is that there's not dosage. It's not this. There hasn't been the body of scientific evidence and support behind the use of marijuana for which doctors and pharmacists could use to dispense it based on that knowledge. Not like we have for Lipitor, right? To make a broad generalization.
Right.
And so, so we got all this data and this efficacy testing and safety testing and whatever. We haven't had it. Now, does that mean it shouldn't be legal? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that it's hard. You can't prescribe a specific dose because you don't know a specific dose because there's no evidence to be 3 milligrams of THC helps with epilepsy.
Right.
6 is too much, right? We don't know the sweet spot. We don't know what's helpful at different levels.
It puts doctors in a position of having to say, if you're going to give someone a medical license, okay, I'm going to recommend that you take this thing to help with your pain or whatever, and I guess use as much as you feel like you need to, as often as you feel like you need to, for as long as you need to.
Which has worked out so well with opioids.
Right. And the problem is good doctors, in my opinion, doctors that are trying to practice ethical, evidence-based medicine are very, very appropriately uncomfortable with doing that.
Right.
And that's why, particularly since 788 passed, literally every doctor that I have spoken to about this says, okay, can we just legalize recreational and leave us out of it?
Right.
And that way the patients can do what they feel like helps them. They can come see their doctor and we can put it in their medical record. I already, just in case any insurance, Medicare, Medicaid people are listening, I already accurately documented my medical charts when patients tell me that they're using illegal drugs.
Right.
But patients can come tell us that. We put it in their chart. Patients don't have to feel like there's some kind of retribution, and we can even put it in their med list and check for interactions. And it can be dealt with in a way that's tougher to deal with now.
And not just marijuana, but other drugs, right? So the pharmacist in my program, we also document that kind of stuff. And we're not listed in the med list, but there are some medications utilize the same liver pathways as some medications and some straight drugs use the same pathways, like meth as an example. And so for people on certain HIV medications, we have to say use less meth because it's going to, double the half-life of the meth because you're on this medication. And so
alcohol is a huge one. Now you can ask a question. Okay, so people can buy alcohol that's metabolized by the liver, and they don't have to have a pharmacist there that's buying, don't have to have a pharmacist that's there checking on them as they buy alcohol and making sure they're not on any medicines that would interact with their alcohol.
Fair question.
But the difference is they're not there buying alcohol, presumably, on the advice of their doctor for purposes of treating a disease.
Oh, fair enough. Which is another argument to just remove the medical community from the equation, right?
Right.
Also, it cracks me up in a state that is so populist, in a state that does not like government overreach and government getting into your business, that you would willingly insert a bureaucratic body into it to make this whole thing possible.
Right.
So this brings me to two questions, and we probably need to work on wrapping up here. We were at about 50 minutes here.
Really? It doesn't feel like it's been that long.
Well, I've been after it here. Getting up on it. I've been really fired up
today.
I have a lot of pent up anxiety and frustration about society.
Sounds like you need some marijuana.
No, thank you. I'll have another glass of bourbon though. So I have two questions for you, Scott, for us to discuss. And the first one is, what if the legislature decided of their own accord with a 2/3 vote to come back to special session, so that a special session can either be from the governor's call or the legislature's own call? Whether or not they can get it's a different question. What if they came back and just voted to legalize it?
I mean, I think that would be tremendous. I think there's 0% chance of that happening.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. I mean, they'd be heroes for the first time in
all these guys who are terrified they're not going to get elected. So I think they would do this after the August runoff, right? If they waited a little bit until they get, because the message for primary runoff voters who are very partisan, right? So for the conservative folks, these are very conservative voters typically. So
many of whom don't want cannabis.
You almost have to tell them sorry, I don't like weed. It's not, never, no way, no how. And then on August 29th, it's all right, smoke them if you got them.
Right.
Everybody let's do it and be you know what? I didn't have a choice. And they legalized it because then the state question goes out the window. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And also all of those voters will be smoking dope by November and they won't go to the polls.
So
I would say if you're conservative, you're Republican, it might be smart to go ahead and legalize it because you've got a better chance of winning in November.
That's actually a really interesting proposition. I was going to say that the reason it's not going to happen is because, this is in fact the reason that Governor Fallon doesn't want to call a special session. She says it's because the rules the Board of Health came up with are adequate. It's really because she doesn't want a lot of really conservative Republicans who are in bitter runoffs or close races to have to take a position on it.
Right. I was what does she care? She's done. She's lame duck.
It's because she's trying to,
give them cover.
Right.
Right. They don't want to have to say they're for or against it. They can just kind of stand outside and be oh man,
I didn't have anything to do with that.
Big government, overreach, waste, fraud, and abuse.
Hate it when government reaches into our private lives, except when it deals with healthcare, medical procedures, religion, those sorts of things.
Right, very intimate things. Yeah, family planning. My second question is, would we be having the same issue, the same discussion, if it was not an election year?
Meaning, be more specific. Would it be, would Would the outrage still be there about these rules?
No, would the that's a good question. No, would the legislature still be dodging action on this? Like, do you think it would be
That's a great.
if no one at 23rd and Lincoln were up for re-election, like right now, the
Right.
entire House is up, right?
Right.
And a third of the Senate,
Right.
And the governor and the lieutenant governor and all these statewide
So if
things.
they had 2 more years of certainty,
well, or just one more year, right?
Yeah.
So, or maybe 2 or 3. But if it wasn't election year, if it was next year,
right?
this was on the ballot and this came up, and they know that they're in office for another year before they've started campaigning, do you think they'd have enough time to be like, all right, it's fine, let's just pass it? Like, do you think
They might, or they might feel in a non-election year more emboldened to oppose it, right? I think that there is a cadre of particularly pretty conservative. So you've got I think the Democrats, the progressives in the legislature that are all for it. All right. I mean, I'm not trying to generalize, but I think that's a fair statement. Then you have the conservative, the Republican supermajority, but within the Republican supermajority, you have the like social conservative wing, but then you got the more like libertarian kind of wing, and then you got like the moderate wing. I think that you could get the libertarians on board, right? I think you could probably get most of the moderates on board, but you have a very vocal and powerful social conservative wing who I think would be hardcore opposed. And I think that opposition, no matter whether it's an election year or an off year, is difficult to overcome.
That's fair. That's a fair statement. I'm curious to see what happens.
Yes.
I mean, I think
my prediction, I've said this, I'll be wrong. I suspect this time next year there will be recreational marijuana in Oklahoma.
Really?
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't, I'm still flabbergasted that within a year we'll have at least medical marijuana, we'll have sports betting, and what's the third thing that was unexpected?
Education funding.
That's fair.
New revenue.
Maybe the tax increase. I feel like there was 3 things that we passed that were not typical Oklahoma conservative values.
I'd say it was the tax increase.
Well, that's fair, yeah. So I'm interested to see. It's a crazy time.
And you know what? So far, as we're aware, as far as we know, with the tax increase, with sports betting, and medical marijuana on the horizon, no one has died.
So far.
Society has not begun to collapse. Everything's still functional. You can still go to church on Sunday.
You can go to church.
You can pray.
State revenue is on the rise.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see. All right. Well, let's quickly wrap it up with a very brief Pruitt Watch.
Oh yeah, we got.
I'm gonna go ahead and play the music.
So, as everyone is hopefully aware by now, after last week, right before the podcast, Scott Pruitt, quote unquote, resigned as EP administrator in the Trump administration. And there has been a lot of writing in the interim, both locally, but especially nationally, that man, with the beating that he took as EPA chief and kind of his resignation and disgrace being tossed to the curb in the Trump administration, that his political career must be over. However, Richard Frossett from the New York Times has a very wise take. He wrote an article this week, Scott Pruitt, fallen EPA chief, may rise again in Oklahoma. And it is absolutely worth heading over to NewYorkTimes.com and taking a read, because I have no doubt that he is correct about Mr. Pruitt's ambitions for statewide office in Oklahoma. I have no doubt that he is also correct that there are lots of people in Oklahoma who don't follow what happens in Washington nearly as closely as we do. Right. And there are some people that follow what happens in Washington and don't care, even see it as, a badge of honor that he's been, had so much trouble with media and ethics. So, for the love, okay, please read the article. Tell your friends about the article. Okay, just have this in the back of your mind, because if Senator Inhofe does not run for re-election in 2020, he's given every indication that he will. But if he does not run for re-election in 2020, I think you can mark it down that Scott Pruitt's next run for office will be as for the U.S. Senator from Oklahoma.
Right. And he's going to have several opponents, but I think because of his name recognition, he may have an edge.
And he's going to have a lot of money because he is one of the biggest advocates for big oil and gas, both locally and nationally, that there is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and some would say that all press is good press.
So yes,
even if it's bad press because you were trying to find dirty old mattresses and special lotion.
You know who would say that?
Who?
P.T. Barnum.
Oh, right.
I
So
watched the Greatest
it
Showman
literally is
last
a circus. That's a circus leader is the one that said that.
Yes.
Fair enough. All right. Well,
All
I guess
right.
that's it on this Pruitt Watch. I think maybe we'll hold off unless something big happens, which is always potential happening. All right. So to wrap up, this kind of brings us to the end of the episode. A couple of heads up on some upcoming events. Next Friday, which is July 20th, we're going to have our first tour of the Capitol Restoration Project. Very excited. Scott, I can tell you that we are full up. All 20 spots have been taken.
That is outstanding.
It is exciting. I don't recognize any of these names, so I'm excited.
That's also very exciting.
It is. So I'm excited to attend and meet these folks. Kimberly, Donna, Jennifer, Deity? I apologize. Diane, Jerry, Rick, Kathy, John, and Kathy. I am excited to meet you all and hope you enjoy the tour. If you are interested in attending one of the Capitol Restoration Project tours, we're also having one in August. It is on Friday, August 10th, and only 2 of those tickets have been claimed so far, so there's still 18 left. You can go to our website, letsfixthisok.org, and go to the events page and find the details there. Also on our Facebook page, facebook.com/letsfixthis. Okay, sorry, we've specified that. Let's fix this. Okay. And don't forget to subscribe and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts. Oh, look at that music. We're getting used to this new system here. All right, so don't forget to subscribe and rate to Let's Pod This on Apple Podcasts because that helps other people discover us and become better informed and better Oklahomans, right? You can connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at Let's Fix This OK. Scott is at SC Melson. I am at AndyOKC. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/letsfixthisok. Our website is letsfixthisok.org. And check it out because we're updating it this weekend with some really new exciting things. You can sign up for our newsletter, as you should. You can read our blog, find resources and details about upcoming events, as I said. You can also make a donation to sign up. No, excuse me. You can make a donation to sign up for a podcast or to support our podcast or just make a general donation, which would be really cool of you. So our podcast is edited and produced by Scott and me, and Let's Pod This is a member of the Mostly Harmless Media Network. Our theme is provided by the Sugar Free All-Stars. Let's Fix This is a nonpartisan, non-profit organization who strives to equip and educate all Oklahomans to engage the government in meaningful ways. We encourage you to get involved in any way you can, and remember, decisions are made by those who show up. Have a great week.